Hello, Wyandotte. If you don't count Jesus Christ, then who would be the greatest person who's ever lived? Well, if you're the Apostle Paul writing the book of Romans, instead you might pick Abraham from the Old Testament. Now, why would he pick Abraham? Because Paul's writing an argument that both types of people, both Jews and Gentiles, are in the same predicament. They are both under sin. They're in trouble. Whether you've had all the laws and traditions passed down through the Old Testament, or whether you were completely ignorant of all of those things, didn't know a thing about it. In both cases, you and I were all under sin. And instead, God has provided a new way to be forgiven, a new kind of salvation, a new way to receive his righteousness that's now been made known apart from the law through faith in Jesus Christ. And so how do you bridge the gap between these two different groups of people? One way would be to go back to the very beginning, to the very first person that you could call a Jew, and that would be Abraham. Now, Abraham stands out in history as being this monumental figure, someone who's important and respected. He is a great, great man. But Paul would argue that, yes, he's great, but he's not great because of the things he's done. Listen to what it says in Romans chapter 4. What then shall we say that Abraham, our forefather, discovered in this matter? If in fact Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. What does Scripture say? Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, what was it that Abraham believed? Well, Abraham believed that God would keep his promise to provide an heir, that God would give Abraham and his wife a son, even though they were already well advanced in age. And so it became this very difficult promise to believe at first because they were so old, but at the same time, Abraham trusted God, and that trust grew as time went by. His faith actually increased as he went through this period waiting for his son to eventually be born. So Abraham trusted God, and when he trusted God, it was credited to him as righteousness. It was as if Abraham were a blameless, perfect person, the best person who ever lived, not because of the things he did, but because he trusted God's promises. Look at what it says in verse 13. In verse 13, it says, "It is not through law that Abraham and his offspring received the promise that he would be heir of the world, but through the righteousness that comes by faith." You and I can have this same righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, through faith in Jesus Christ, by trusting God that he can do something impossible. You and I are probably, if we look back at our own track record and the mistakes that we've made and that kind of thing, we know that we're not in the running for best person who ever lived. Our accomplishments are probably not that special, and we certainly have done things to hurt others and to hurt ourselves. But we can still trust that God will keep his promise to take us to heaven, to adopt us into his family, to give us eternal life, not because we did good things, but because he's good. And he'll keep his promises. And you and I can trust him like Abraham trusted God. Will you make a decision to trust God today? Will you decide that, yeah, I know I'm not the best person and I make a lot of mistakes, but God doesn't make mistakes. And he's promised to rescue me, to forgive my sins, and to bring me into a new relationship with him because of what Jesus Christ has done. You and I can do the greatest thing ever done and trust Jesus to save us and make us new. Will you make that decision today and every day? God bless you.